You have been trained to think money is about discipline, while the real game is about design. And here is the part nobody wants to say out loud. The rules of spending have been optimized to keep you stuck, while the people at the top spend in ways that multiply their options. In 2026, with AI cutting jobs and rent swallowing paychecks, learning to be frugal is not a strategy, it is a coping mechanism. This is financial education, not financial advice. But if you want the uncomfortable truth about financial freedom, you need to understand how people at different levels of money spend their thoughts, their time, their attention, and yes, their cash. You will not hear this from mainstream finance. You will hear it from the people who survive the system because they understand it early. You will hear it from operators on Wall Street, from founders who have watched marketing budgets turn into assets, from landlords who know that control beats ownership, and from investors who treat money like power instead of comfort. So today I'm going to break down a hard framework. 6 worlds of spending money. Not motivational worlds, not feelings-based worlds. Real worlds with real behaviors, real incentives, and real outcomes. And every time I explain one world, I will show you what it looks like in the real 2026 economy. The layoffs, the inflation hangover, the housing detachment, the retirement crunch, the debt mountain that never shrinks, and the way passive income turned into a content farm for people making $0. Cliffhanger warning: by the time we reach the fourth and fifth world, you will realize why the poor stay poor even when they work harder. And by the time we reach the sixth world, you will understand why some people never fear money the way you do. First, let's start with the lowest world, because it is not about stupidity, it is about survival programming. The first world is when you treat money like it is your oxygen. You count it like it can run out tomorrow. You stretch it like an elastic band that might snap if you breathe wrong. You tell yourself that saving every spare dollar is virtue. In reality, it is fear wearing a suit. People in this world don't just spend less, they don't trust the future. They think the future is a locked door and money is the only key, so they act accordingly. If they see a jacket they like, they don't buy it because the price feels like danger. If they see an experience that would make them feel alive, they don't do it because it feels like a mistake. If their phone breaks, they keep using the old one until it becomes a liability. They live like the next emergency is guaranteed, and they treat every purchase as if it is stealing from some future self that will never arrive. You know who lives in this world? Not lazy people, not unskilled people. It is nurses who work overtime and still worry. It is logistics workers who watch their bills grow while their wage stays flat. It is people who took out loans, refinanced once, then again, then again. And in 2026, it is also people who got AI retraining advice in 2020 and are now watching their new career path get automated by the same AI that teaches itself. Because here is the cold truth. When your spending comes from scarcity, you don't build, you maintain, you don't invest, you postpone, you don't take risks, you shrink. And the system rewards shrinking. That is not conspiracy, that is incentives. When you act like money is scarce, you become predictable. You accept low offers. You negotiate poorly. You don't build leverage because you are afraid of outcomes. You don't start a business because you can't afford the emotional volatility of a failure. So you stay an employee. You stay under someone else's rules. Now, let me give you a micro story. Picture a person named David, 32 years old, a nurse in a mid-sized city in the United States. David worked through the pandemic years like a machine. Then inflation hit hard. Not headline inflation, real inflation. Groceries that used to cost a manageable amount started costing more than his weekly self-control. His rent went up again. He watched his savings melt, and he didn't blame himself in a helpful way. He blamed himself in a helpless way. So David did what people like him always do. He cut spending. He stopped looking at menus. He bought off-brand everything. He stopped dating for a while because it felt like waste. He told himself that someday, if he just tightened enough, he would be safe. A year later, his car needed repairs. The mechanic quoted him a number that might as well have been a second mortgage. David looked at that number like it was a verdict. He postponed the repair. He kept driving. And one day, the car didn't start. He missed work. He lost overtime. And then he had to pay for the tow and the repairs on top of the lost wages. Notice what happened. David didn't just lose money. He lost time, momentum, and options. But the bigger loss was internal. His mind stopped treating spending as a tool. It treated spending as an indictment, and that is the trap. In the first world, money becomes fear. Fear makes you smaller. Smaller makes you easier to exploit. Now here is pattern interrupt number 1. The rich you see online will tell you, just be more disciplined. That advice is cute, but it is not the main variable. Discipline is not the problem. Scarcity thinking is. Because the people at the top don't spend like they're afraid. They spend like they're alive. The second world is spending to escape scarcity emotions. It is still not financial freedom, but it's the start of something different. People buy for energy, not for comfort. In this world, people can walk into a high-end store and not feel like they're committing a crime. They don't freeze at the price tag. They evaluate the value of the experience, the fit, the identity, the feeling of capability. They might still be careful, but their carefulness is different. It's not driven by panic. It's driven by taste and timing. Now, in 2026, this world looks like people who are not waiting for permission. They don't wait for the economy to make sense. They don't wait for a job offer that will never come. They might still have debt, but they treat debt as a bridge, not as a cage. They might use credit strategically to shift into a higher income track, because they believe the future is not locked. They believe they can steer. You can spot this world because they stop obsessing over the price and start paying attention to how spending changes their trajectory. Here is the uncomfortable part. Many of the success influencers teach you to spend on luxury to feel worthy. That's not it. The difference is whether the purchase is connected to a bigger engine or just a temporary dopamine hit. So in this world, the purchase is often tied to performance, access, network, and creation. A strong example is the way some entrepreneurs invest in gear, branding, and membership communities. They pay for training, they pay for a coach, they pay for the right workspace. Not because they worship consumption, but because they know that their state of mind determines output, and state of mind determines income. That sounds like a motivational sentence, but it is measurable in the real world. In customer-facing jobs, confidence changes how you negotiate and how you sell. In technical jobs, confidence changes whether you ship work or freeze. In business, confidence changes whether you prospect. AI has made this worse for people stuck in World 1. Because AI can outperform you in tasks, but AI cannot outperform you in judgment if you have trained your judgment to be timid. So, if you stay in World 1, AI becomes your executioner. If you move toward World 2, you still face AI disruption, but you stop wasting your energy on fear. You start building leverage. And yes, I know what you're thinking. So I just need to feel confident and spend more? No. You need to spend with purpose. And the purpose is where the next world begins. The third world is spending to buy other people's alignment. In plain language, it is using money to create goodwill, loyalty, and momentum in a way that doesn't look like charity. Most people in debt think the only moral spending is on themselves. Or they think moral spending is giving to causes and feeling virtuous. In the third world, money is used to trigger action in others. It is still strategic. It is still transactional at the level of incentives, but it is also human. And it is why rich people tip like they're building a system. In 2026, you can see this in service industries that are on the edge. Parking lots staffed by overworked attendants. Hotel staff carrying burnout. People who work temporary jobs, but do real work every day. When you spend in World 1, you act like you're just extracting a service for the cheapest price. When you spend in World 3, you treat service like a relationship that needs a spark. Let's make this concrete with another micro story. Imagine you run errands in a busy city, and you're late. You pay a premium for valet parking. You get a tired attendant who looks like he might hate you before you even speak. In the first world, you pay the fee, and you don't add anything because you think tipping is optional. You think, they're already paid. In the third world, you understand that their paycheck is not the whole incentive structure. Their real incentive includes how they are treated that day, whether they feel respected, whether they believe you will remember them, whether they want to perform at a higher level. You add a tip that is enough to matter to them, not to flex, to change their behavior. And then something small happens. They handle your car faster. They return smiles. They reduce friction. They treat you as someone important. The service isn't just service anymore. It becomes a smoother day. You might even get small favors later because they remember how you made them feel. This sounds petty until you realize what it really is. It is low-cost influence. It is social capital bought at the margin. Now pattern interrupt number 2. People like to brag that rich people are greedy. They're not always greedy. They can be generous in very calculated ways. They understand that culture inside a business drives productivity more than slogans do. A boss who pays attention to morale gets better output. That is not philosophy. That is operations. So, in this world, spending is used to get people to work with heart, not just with compliance. It is also how leaders grow. Because eventually you can't run everything yourself. You need teams. You need people willing to do more than the minimum. But you should also notice what World 3 does not do. It doesn't guarantee freedom, it just creates temporary momentum. It's the world where you start to build networks and trust, and you learn that money is not just for objects, it is for relationships. Then comes the fourth world, and this is where the story turns darker. The fourth world is spending to control the value of money itself. People in this world don't see cash as life, they see cash as energy that can be converted. They talk like money is alive because to them, money is a system of flows. They understand something that World 1 never learns. Money has a different meaning depending on where it sits. Money that sits in a poor investment, in a bad structure, in a leaking bank account, is not the same as money that sits in a structure that returns value to you. And the rich don't just chase returns, they chase conversion. Conversion is everything in 2026. Interest rate decisions from the Fed can change borrowing costs quickly, but the deeper damage is that real purchasing power doesn't come back the way people hope. So you can't just save. You must convert savings into assets or into productive spending. People in World 4 do this by asking a different question every time they spend. What is the long-term multiplier of this cash? Are you spending to decrease expenses long-term, or spending to increase income long-term? Are you buying assets that produce cash flow? Are you buying skills that improve your earning capacity even when AI changes job descriptions? Now, the uncomfortable part. In the fourth world, they also spend to avoid permanent damage. They don't treat debt like a moral failing, but they treat it like a tool with strict rules. They borrow only when the borrowed money funds something that has higher expected returns, or at least stabilizes their cash flow. They do not use debt to buy consumption that depreciates the moment it leaves the store, and this matters more than ever with housing and insurance chaos. In many places, rent is effectively permanent. Home prices detached from wages years ago, and in 2026 they are still high enough that a large chunk of the population will never get ahead through ownership in the normal way. So people in World 4 understand that housing can be a weapon or a trap. If you rent forever, you lose wealth-building momentum. But if you own with smart structure, you might turn housing into an income engine. This doesn't mean everyone can do it. I'm not selling fantasy, I'm describing mechanism. Housing becomes an asset when it creates a cash flow stream and when the structure prevents you from being crushed by taxes, maintenance, and bad management. You can feel the difference in how people talk. World 1 talks about finding the best deal. World 4 talks about cash flow stability. World 3 talks about people. World 4 talks about systems. Now pattern interrupt number 3. There is a reason financial advice tells you to buy index funds or stay diversified, but avoids talking about the conversion of spending into leverage. It is easier to recommend a generic portfolio than to help you understand why your life is leaking money. The fourth world forces a hard question. What are you doing with the cash that you already have? Because if your spending is not converting into either security or income, it is not neutral, it is costing you future options. In 2026, options matter. AI job displacement is not theoretical, it is happening in layers. Administrative work, first-level customer service, basic coding tasks, even parts of marketing production. And when AI removes tasks, your income depends even more on how quickly you can shift. Your spending needs to fund that shift. So in World 4, you spend on the ability to move. You invest in skill building that is harder to automate, like leadership, negotiation, deep domain expertise, and the human parts of work that models still struggle to replicate. And yes, some people in World 4 are ruthless. They optimize taxes legally, they structure income, they care about timing, they care about which account the money sits in. They care about risk management, they care about insurance and climate exposure, because insurance markets collapsing is not a headline anymore in places with wildfire risk, flood risk, and extreme weather. But even with World 4, you still don't fully understand what real financial freedom is. That comes in the fifth world. The fifth world is spending with a business logic so high it becomes strategy over time. It is the world of buying leverage, not buying feelings, and it is also the world where the how becomes the secret. People in this world understand that commerce is not just transactions, it is platform control, distribution, and ecosystem design. They understand that in many industries, whoever controls the middle gets paid repeatedly while everyone else does the labor. In 2026, this is visible everywhere. In software, the platform owns access. In retail, the marketplace controls discovery. In gig work, the app controls the customer relationship. And in finance, the infrastructure controls the liquidity. Even crypto, which promised decentralization, has been swallowed by regulation and institutional control. In 2026, large firms hold more of the crypto ecosystem than retail investors do. Retail still dreams of freedom, but many retail participants are effectively customers of systems built by institutions. They might trade, but the rules and infrastructure are not theirs. They do not control issuance, custody, or market making in the way that matters. So in World 5, spending is used to build control points. Not always by buying a flashy asset, sometimes by buying the channel, sometimes by acquiring the distribution, sometimes by investing in the team that can execute faster than competitors, sometimes by designing a business model where value flows back to the owner at multiple stages. Here is the mechanism, explained plainly. If you run a simple business where you take a fixed margin for a one-time sale, you are exposed. You win only when you can sell repeatedly to new customers. Your growth depends on constant marketing spend and constant performance. If instead you build a system where customers stay, where data improves the product, where partners distribute, where the company becomes the default route, you get compounding. Spending earlier becomes a foundation for future cash flows. And in 2026, compounding is increasingly rare for normal workers because AI is changing the cost of production. When AI reduces labor costs, whoever owns the distribution and the model gets the benefits. That is why work hard has stopped being enough for World 1 people. Work hard on tasks that can be automated becomes irrelevant. Work hard without leverage becomes exhausting. World 5 people still work hard, but they spend hard to buy leverage first. Now the fifth world also has a psychological difference. These people don't chase status as a reward, they chase alignment between incentives and results. They ask, who benefits if this model succeeds? And they design compensation accordingly. They know what many employees never learn. If you don't align incentives, you will get minimal compliance. If you align incentives,